Hey, dude.
Hi.
I'm
Oh,
checking the microphone and everything. How are you?
very well. How are you? You are somewhere different.
Yes.
Are you in a chalet in Switzerland?
No such French words. No, it's not a chalet. We call it hytte, meaning, cottage.
Oh, lovely. You're in Norway.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
Yes.
I was thinking of I have a bottle of mulled wine, and I was thinking of drinking some a bit later because it's certainly in Britain there's this prejudice against drinking it after Christmas as if it's only a Christmas thing.
It's
But
weird, right?
I see no reason why not. So
And considering your cherry wine, I think that's on point.
well
Tom,
indeed.
you've been so much on my mind recently.
Oh no.
Partly because testing the map in the Vision Pro, your
Ah,
little index card keeps being front and center, which is certainly no bad thing because you're so well connected to other nodes. But it's cool to see. So yeah, I,
uh,
I am somewhere different, as the perceptive Jonathan noticed. Oh, Tess is here too. Good. Hello, Tess.
Hello.
I'll have to show you the view out the window in a minute.
where
Oh,
are
that's
you?
right.
Norway?
You're in Norway for winter break, right?
Yes,
Oh.
we don't really do spring break, which I have, even though I studied at an American university, Syracuse, I never experienced. But this is the opposite of spring break in a way. Cold and frigid in many ways. So, yeah, we're going to talk more
Are,
about the.
are- Aren't you
Yeah,
supposed to
please
go
come.
south for winter break?
Well,
Is it?
Norwegians like to put pieces of wood on their legs and fall down snowy slopes.
Oh, okay.
Hey, Peter.
And apparently cheat on their girlfriends.
Yeah.
I can. We're talking about what the best way to say that you've been cheating on your girlfriend is, according to the Olympics. There was this Norwegian sports person who, in an interview,
Biathlete.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
good. So he knows how to use a gun too.
Yes.
Yeah. And get away really quickly.
So what was the answer?
Well,
It
no,
was
he was talking about his he was the bronze medalist and they asked him how he felt and he said he felt awful because he cheated on his girlfriend 3 months ago
Oh,
and he wants her back.
one of the nice memes on this was when you blocked your ex-boyfriend on every medium except broadcast television.
That's good.
Yeah, thought that was quite charming.
thank gosh.
Gosh, indeed. Right, so today we'll continue the general discussion on authoring. I have a few things to show you guys to kick us off. Next month, most likely, so actually, let me wind back. September will be Future of Text in London this time again. It will coincide with the ACM Hypertext Conference. So we are not being co-located because apparently that is some kind of a special semi-legal term or whatever. But we are sharing a building. So if anyone's coming for the ACM Hypertext, obviously Future Text will remain free. Now, I've been talking to the organizers because they want me to do some community stuff, which is fine. And one of the obvious things, and I'm sure Ken will perk up at this, is to build some sort of a VR experience for the events. So the most obvious thing that we're looking at is, okay, I see that Tom and Ken messages. So the most obvious thing we're thinking of doing is building kind of a corridor where each day has a little time thing, very, very basic. But as the papers get released, then they are listed along that and we can interact with it. So, hi Astral, can you hear me? You can. You took your mic off, so now you can hear me because you can speak. Yeah, just really briefly. Next month, we're going to be talking about having an event in a timeline in XR because we can build that with what we have. But the key thing is it's desperately important it's an open way of doing it. So, Ken, I hope we can come to some kind of a format, you tell me whatever you use in your world, and I'll try to implement it in my world, so that when people go to the ACM websites and they see there's some spatial stuff, hopefully without having to get the whole environment, they can at least get the listings in a way that they can then choose to view an XR depending on what system they use.
If we use the WebXR system that I use with my students, I know that it works with the Quest 3 and Quest 3S. I don't think I know of how to do it. Well, it's all mixed reality. I haven't really done anything with that with the Vision Pro. So I could provide it for an inexpensive platform that probably a lot more people will have.
Yeah, no, that's super cool. Hi, Mark, Peter, Rob, and Brandel. We were just talking briefly about next month. We will be talking. The topic will be. Let me wind back. In September, Future of Text and ACM Hypertext will be happening. Future of Text will be at the beginning, overlapping a bit with the workshops. It's kind of like a workshop. But I've been talking to the organizers, and we're looking at an idea of having an XR representation of the events and the papers, and kind of a cool timeline listing. So I was just talking to Ken now about two things. Next month, that'll be our topic of discussion. It'll be introduced on the first meeting in March. Secondly, if Ken has kind of a format for this, not a runtime, but a format, then hopefully it'll be able to run in my environment too. And that means that this kind of experience can really go from place to place, like the passion of plain text for spatial knowledge type of thing. So that was just a brief thing. Right, for today on authoring, I have a few things to show you guys. So hang on, to just kick off our discussion. Actually, hang on, first of all, before it gets too dark, I should probably show you where I am, because it's kind of cool. So this is snowy Norway. You're probably seeing a lot of yourself, but yeah, there's snow out there. That was very useless. I apologize. It's too dark and it's all covering things.
There's snow in New York too.
Yes, I hear. That's right. Okay, it's quite comfy. Right, so you can see the slides, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, so just a few. Hang on, you guys are. I can see too many of you. Can't see the slide. So, yeah, briefly, just to kind of be inspired around this topic, I'll do the demo last, actually. I have a few things to show you guys. But the notion is that if we, as a community, completely throw away PDF and all of that stuff, pretend we have a new free-flowing document format like Word or EPUB, whatever that is, richly, visually, and semantically marked up, and which can be in a format that can be secure, meaning that it can be cited. It can't be changed after the fact. As we've gone through so many times, what can we do? So, looking at two of the icons in the field, Doug Engelbart was very much about, and please interrupt me for this if you want to, flexible views, addressing and jumping, and visual hierarchy. Ted was very much about parallel documents visibly connected. I'm not pretending here that this is what they were all about, absolutely not. But in terms of spatial information, I think these kind of reminders for all of us are useful. So this means that we can we can look inside and outside the document. So if we go into what Claude did, I think this is kind of amazing. I asked it, based on the work that I've been doing and that they did, if it could illustrate. So it made me an interactive app. I didn't ask for it. Trying to get it to run in Swift, but I haven't been able to yet. So Doug's stuff of choosing what layers to watch. And by the way, if you type, I said there was a comment. If it's for me, please speak it. If it's just general, then fine to type, because I can't really see it. Did the obvious thing with the constellation, Nelson's parallel pages, and Doug's view specs, so you can choose how you want to see the data. All stuff that we know. I just think it's crazy that Claude just volunteered and did this. It is relevant, though, for our discussion, because if we now I'm going to turn the volume up so Ted will speak to you. It's quite brief.
Can fly around and see as you step among successive connections, you can see one page after another swarfing up. That's a combination of swoop and morph, swarfing up to meet its companion.
I'm sure you've all seen that, and this is the 68 demo of Doug's, where obviously sped up like mad, but he is doing kind of mind mapping. But the thing is very easily in the environment, like here he has a list of shopping things. He can draw a map, and then he can choose to double click on any item to see it expanded. I know you've all seen this, but I found it very, very interesting because it led to this thought here. You don't need to read that, I'll talk it. So imagine that this node, the white one, is Tom, right? And I want to read. So it's one thing to make it big, but then I have to walk, which is normally okay. But very often you might want to do an analogous thing to what Doug was doing. You want that to be your main thing, right? And it's not enough to hide the other things necessarily. So let's say you make it big and you pull it towards you. Reasonable, right? But what I plan to do this week is that if you've made it big and pull and then done another move, when you close it, it'll snap back to its original location. Does that make sense? So that may be incredibly obvious. I'm going to turn this off and on again, but the reason I'm highlighting it to you guys in particular is that's the kind of thing that if it was in a movie, it would probably be obvious. But to find out when you're done with something, what does that mean? Does that mean just close it? Or when you have a lot of stuff, does it mean close it and put it back where it was? What does it mean by where it was? Does that mean at the origin of the session, the Z-plane? Does it mean when you were enlarging? All these questions become really, really interesting. Any comments before I do the brief in-headset demo update? Okay.
If you can solve my browser tab issue, I'll be eternally grateful.
Well, it's going in that direction because when we look at these big, I know I'm not sharing yet, when we look at these big kind of origin ideas, interaction is of course a key thing, and that does mean, like we talked about, hiding stuff. You can see, right? You can see?
Yep, we can see.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, thank you. All right, so most valuable vision accessory, the battery thing. Okay, I'm going to go into here. All right, yeah. So, recenter the view. Okay, open author. Yeah, that's fine. We'll go back to this one to go to the map. The map launch.
We've lost your voice.
Oh, you have, of course. That's on the computer. I'm going to take the laptop around the corner too. Thank you for saying that. I'm going to make the screen dark so you can hear me now, right?
Yes, loud and clear.
You can hear me?
Yep,
Yes.
sounds good.
Okay, cool. Right, so this is a relatively large map, as obviously you can see. So what we've done, we've gone through the commands here a lot. So now you have select person, like we've done many times. You move the persons over here maybe, and you'll see that wasn't really perfect. Tom Hames is out. So I'll do sort by vertical alphabetical. I'll do align left. And if there's any in depth, then I just do a snap back and it snaps. So put that over here and select, deselect. You see how, even though we want gestures, it's actually quite quick to do this once you have a little bit of experience with it. So what I was talking about earlier, let's say NATO, right? If I double click on that, that didn't have anything. Let's find Tom. I know Tom has stuff. Okay, so to do that, I select persons and deselect. Where is it going the wrong way? There he is. So if I were to do this, right, I get more stuff, which is very useful. But if that was up there, it wouldn't be as useful. So when I have it here, the notion is that if I now snap it back, it should automatically get small and go to its origin. That makes sense, right? We also have two really important things. This is what really came up last year with the annotated bibliography. It's like fault computer. I'm not interested in that. So whenever I select only one item, I have different tools. So now I can choose to
I guess after when it's cold, it doesn't want to give up her vitamin stack. No, they're just right here in the
I'm not sure.
I think they're around and I forgot.
To move? Okay, hang on. Sorry, guys. I will go somewhere else. Do I still have connection with you?
We hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, we can see it here.
Okay, almost finished, but let me just be in here. My mother was, I don't think she realized she was on camera. Right. So if you have only one selected, you can now hide. Let's do that again. Okay, well, why is it giving me a bit? Okay, you can also do, and this build was just done a few minutes ago. So now I've liked 2 items. So now I can choose to see only liked items. This is from earlier. It's a bit messy, but so we're starting with hiding and liking, right? You already know, of course, the focus. So if we now go here, everything else goes away. It's still workable,
There you are.
right?
That's scared. Oops.
Any questions?
Break.
I don't have a question so much as Tom's joke about his tabs kind of gave me a philosophical question about all of this. You know, which is just the tabs kind of remind me that all of this technology, whether it's, you know, a laptop or, you know, different apps and things, you know, they have tools built in to help us simplify and organize things, a lot of which we don't already use. So I'm just wondering about, you know, human malaise and all of this. Like this intrigues me because it's stuff I can touch, and I'm just kind of wondering, like, do I not do well? Like, for me personally, do I not use the tools already at my disposal because they're, you know, I can't touch them because they're sort of more invisible? Like, I don't know, like how, you know, we're trying to organize data, we're trying to interact better with data, and I feel like some of these tools exist and I don't use them, and I'm just wondering what makes us adapt certain tools and what doesn't.
That has been a long-term research interest of mine anyway, but I think a lot of times we bang tools into round tools into square holes because we need them to do something that they're not really designed for. And the problem is when you design tools that are, there's no such thing as a tool that's good for everybody. You know, I think I will say Apple has probably come closer than this, although I have to say they've kind of gone away from that a little bit in the last few updates. But, you know, Apple's always had that idea of, you know, how do you get to the basic human, you know, where am I going to look for things and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, you can't fix our brains. I mean, my comment about the tabs was not really, it might have been funny, but you know, at the sense that I think it's a joke, because what it is for me is they're all unfinished projects, and things that I started to get into and then, you know, felt like I needed to bring to some conclusion. And it's like a really, really messy box of crap. And I literally, one on my to-do list today is to go in there and purge tabs because I can't find anything anymore. And so, this may be just my ADD acting up, but the reality is that, we all have a lot of balls in the air at any given moment. And if there's a visual way to simplify that, I think the challenge these days is not adding information, it's simplifying it. So
I mean, just to respond to that, like I have a spreadsheet document of contacts that I talk to for business, let's say, and I go through it periodically, and I could do, I just kind of go down the list start to finish. And I could do any number of things to color code it, make it sortable, but instead I like to just literally cut the row and move it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's my own weird laziness about then I'd have to look up how do I color code and sort, or if it's just that I like it physically reinforces something like, okay, you've played this out, or you've reconnected with this person, whatever I'm moving them for.
Yeah, and my biggest problem with those sorts of things is that if it takes me more time to do the sorting than it does to do the collecting, so to speak, then I tend to not do the sorting after a while, because that's a different thing. And one of my watchwords in life is that a clean desk means you're not working hard enough. But no, it's really hilarious, really funny actually, that this comes up right now, because about a week ago I was struggling with this issue, and just trying to, just thinking, I've got all these projects in the air and I need to figure out how to prioritize them and what I need to do today and so on and so forth. And I put this request into Gemini, and it built me this nice orbital system, which you could that right there on a whiteboard, and gave me a whole strategy for using it and all this sort of thing. And I tried it for the weekend. I'm like, wow, this works really well. And then I asked it, where did you get this from? Because I figured it'd come from some book somewhere, and I wanted to see the book. I wanted to look at the book because it made a lot. This is cool. And it said, oh no, this is designed specifically for you, based on your interests in gaming, based on your interest in systems thinking and visual thinking. This system is designed to appeal to the peculiarities of your brain. And that really got me thinking about, okay, so think about all of this. I hate self-help books because inevitably they're the lowest common denominator in terms of, because they have to make a system that supposedly works for everybody. Well, maybe I'm just weird, or maybe the system, for whatever reason, I've never found a system that actually made sense for me. And so, just organizing and prioritizing things on a daily basis is a major struggle for me. And so I'm still tweaking this a little bit, but I think the world of XI is really going to start to create customized work environments to AI, combined with XR, is going to really create customized work environments to where it's suited not for the average, but for the person.
Absolutely.
And that's really going to change how we think about these things.
Absolutely. I hope we'll go that way. Over to Mark.
I just I put my hand out thinking of Tessa's point about should we be using this or something else. I think the thing about maps, or whether in 3D or 2D, to be honest, I don't think it makes a vast amount of difference in terms of the one thing they're useful for is sort of exploration. And so what you need to think of it as a view spec, and also think of it as a scope view spec. It's not going to be much use for looking at everything you're just going to end up with enormous infographics, so you're in display space. Where it's probably useful is working down at the order of somewhere south of about 100 notes. Now, you might have pulled out 100 notes out of a bigger thing, but you get much beyond that, you're back in a display problem. It's just too much to play around with. Where it's useful is you could almost think of it like a triage space. So you can do a bit of thinking outside the box. I want these things over there, I want those over there. These are closer to those, but they're also close to this. And you can do this very loose associative thinking, placing, without having to draw any lines, without having to do any metadata. Because at this point, all you're doing is relative position. And we've talked in the past about, okay, you can use subtle things like maybe shape or color or size or something if you want to do a bit of hinting. So that's an enhancement on it. But the basic thing where this view spec is broadly useful is sort of doing some close-in sorting on a sort of a humanly reasonable amount of information. And then if you want to go bigger, you're basically dealing with you're really doing info viz. Yeah, Fred.
Just briefly on that, with all due loving respect, you don't know that, and I don't know that. It's an easy perspective. I don't fully disagree with it, but the reason I show the demo now is there are so many more controls, like hide, organize, sort. We're also building in timeline. So the volume of data, because of the volume of space, does increase a lot. Now there is one hard kind of catch on it, that is on Vision OS and also on WebXR, it's problematic to automatically bring in new data. So if you have a node presenting another map, technically right now, we can't really do that. But the amount of data we can show, it's actually a huge amount if you have the right controls. And I have a feeling Ken will expand on something like that. So please.
Yeah, just quickly, I don't think you were describing what I was talking about, but
we'll talk about that after Ken. Ken has to leave. Please put a pin in it and we will get back to it, Mark. Ken, please.
You're muted still.
I have to go in 3 minutes, so I'm going to try to be quick here. I have a VR class, and each week I give them something to challenge them. And last week I gave them a little assignment, which you can play with yourself. I gave them this code. Which I will share my screen so that I can show you directly what's going on here. So I'm going to share my screen, and we'll just go here. Let's see. I have to bring up some. There it is. That's it. So this is it. So basically, if you go to this web page, and then you click on anything, like you click on Jimmy Wales or something, etc., or you go to click on Alabama, or you can go to that page, click on Chicago, and it shows basically, it's basically just Wikipedia. But if there is a link to something, then it will go to that, and then it will show you where it came from, so you can keep track of it. So semantically, it's basically building a tree structure. And one of the nice things about Wikipedia is, even though this is plain text, if you notice there are these 2 equal signs, 3 equal signs, in the plain text result, it's giving me the headings, the subheadings, and all that semantics. So if we want to build this in VR or XR, all the information is there for me to start creating structure. So I wanted to give my class something very simple and easy to work with. And the actual code itself is embarrassingly simple. In fact, if I share the screen and then you go here, and then we go to view, here we go to view developer view, view source. That's the whole thing right there. That's all I need to ask of Wikipedia. And then the rest is all just graphics that I built on top of that. So to keep it simple and let them just make stuff. Well, that's it. That's what I wanted to show.
That's perfect, Ken, and it shows the value of having clean data, obviously. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Really, really important. I look forward to seeing you many times before, but to do stuff for the ACM Hypertext conference and have different displays would be so much fun to collaborate across the ocean. And as far as the, thank you, darling. Just briefly also, as far as the dialogue with MIT is coming along, there's now a secondary person that I'm talking to, who I'm having a meeting with either this week or next week. And that person was suggested by Claude. Turned out to be an old friend of Vince. But I just asked Claude, is there anyone else I should talk to? And I came back with all these recommendations. Crazy world. So yeah, thank you for being here, Ken, and thank you very much for that.
Yeah, I look forward to playing more with it. Thank you for sending the link as well.
Sure.
And if you want, if in your VR text discussions, I sent a link to the Young Hai Chang Heavy Industries Lotus Blossom that I built and showed. It should be working on Quest and everything. I was showing it around in San Francisco last week.
Awesome. Great. I'll play around with that. All right. See you all next week. All right.
Thanks.
Thanks. Brandel, from the earlier meeting, I didn't know the Heavy Industries was you.
I didn't make it. It's an artist from it's an artist duo from Korea who made it, but I built the virtual reality representation of it.
Okay, I get it now. Thank you. And you have your hand up, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to talk about the representation of arrangements of things that are too complicated to see. So, Tom was very generous in saying that Apple sometimes gets some things right. And one of them, which people are actually on the fence on, is the magnifying launch bar. At the bottom of the screen when people have magnification on, it is it's a partial success in that it actually does allow people to manage the sort of the precision issues related to selecting icons when there are too many of them, but it's not so pronounced in terms of there's no information down there on the task on the launch bar. A dock, it's called. You don't get the zoom factor and the scaling is not sufficiently pronounced to the point where you can kind of glean more or better or different information. It's just a motor enhancer. If it's okay to share, one of the things that I was playing with many years ago, Word Reality is now 9 years old. If I can share my screen on this guy. So I made a word processor in WebVR many years ago. And a couple of the things that I built were sort of around those kinds of zooming user interfaces. So this is a film canister. And on the HTC Vive, you had a touchable pad on the back of it that you could drag your finger up and down on. What I did here was, so this was a folder effectively of photos, and you could drag them up and they'd get a bit larger, but they'd mostly be spread out. And then to that sort of magnifying and moving idea, I had this, so there's a purple guy there. I'll tighten this in a little bit. And then I grabbed something I'm sure incredibly pithy. I grabbed this Explorer and it sort of displaces things continuously, but also has the ability to, that's all I show of it, to grow things while they're in that sort of domain. So it's a lot like effectively the magnifier in the dock, but much bigger in terms of how much bigger it makes them. And I do think it's really interesting that it's gestural in that it's not related to a discrete ETE, not EET, action where you click on this, you click on that, but that you have the ability to, one of the neat things about the dock and its magnification is that it is continuous in terms of the impact it has on the overall arrangement of elements. And I think that the continuity that you get from being able to kind of maximize and push things around like this by virtue of having an object is a really interesting thing that I would love to be able to see more of. Obviously since 17, a ton of macOS, iOS, and visionOS has become more, not by my hand by any means, and I'm not here to represent Apple, but has become much more continuous in that regard. And I think it's the right direction. So sort of a suggestion and a point of view is I like magnification. I love being able to move those things around for the purposes of focus. Something I also like is for those things to be, because it also implies a great recoverability. But yeah.
Thank you, Brandel. That was really cool and extremely pertinent. Now, what was being shown in the demo as you all know, it's only xy plus flat z, right? Playing with it presents so many issues that I wasn't aware of initially. And this touches quite a lot on Mark's point, because it now knows the difference between context and subject. The way it does that is if you, like after this meeting, I run through, let's say in AI, and we get lots of terms that was discussed. Separately, I'll have a file of all of you on the basic who you are. So I'll ask the AI not to make a new person thing, because that's something I have. It's not a, it's not an extracted thing, because when I'm in the headset, I want to be able to, and Mark, this is where I think it's really a really useful discussion. There's stuff that is contextual that sometimes I really want to see where things come in from, and other times I want to get rid of it, right? And then there's the thing of when you have one node that isn't interesting, until half an hour ago, in this system, you couldn't get rid of it. Now we have a good old-fashioned hide. That's it, right? You click the button. Of course, we want more gestures, but unfortunately, Vision OS is difficult to do gestures natively, and that's fine. That's just the state of it right now, right? We have a bit of zooming, a bit of this, and all of that. So very much inspired by our work last year with annotated bibliographies. To be able to like something and hide something is crucial. To be able to focus on something, whatever that might mean, because it can mean so many things, is crucial. To be able to cluster, as Mark was saying, is crucial. The lines in between become more specialized in a way. You know, when I click on Tom Hames, there will be a lot of lines, but in and of themselves, that's kind of noisy. So that's why we have the focus, so everything else goes away. So you say, oh, that's what he was talking about, and then deselect, right? So Brandl, you're going, even way back then, you're going beyond this. But the experiments in very much having relooked at Doug's 68 demo, for crying out loud, he had a map with locations. You could double click on them and you could read about them and go back. You know, we had image maps for a while that in terms of an average user, they're gone. So very much what I'm trying to do here is recreate that. And I had a discussion with someone yesterday who happened to be an early Apple person. Okay, well, anyway, it was Bruce Horn. And I said, Bruce, the Finder desktop environment on Vision is awful. Why don't you consider spending time making a Finder for Vision? Because I think, Mark, that if there's more of a seamless, here is a document or a container, and then it opens up, if that's more seamless, we can have a very much larger workspace. But in terms of the active elements around you, I think you have a very good intuition to the right size. So how to manage that and move around is really, really important. We need to keep testing and test. I know that that doesn't really address your initial point, but the feeling here is, first of all, the headset, even though it's sci-fi level advanced, the Vision Pro, it's extremely clunky. You know, look at this ridiculous battery pack, right? The fact that it ruins our hair, and I find that really annoying, is a real issue. Once it's glasses, it'll be something different. But I think the passion that I inherited from Brandl is, for a while, try to ignore the equipment and just enjoy the notion of connectable knowledge in space. Much closer to the human, how the human brain evolved. Mark, please.
Yeah, I just closing the loop. I think all that happened is because I was probably not talking in visual terms. I think you missed and then restated something I'd said, which was to make the point about, you know, scope. I mean, so if you expand and collapse something, but the really, I think the thing I've learned from these systems is there's like a sort of enoughness level. Now, whether you deal with that by saying I'm going to only allow this many things at all in the area, or you say I'm going to decompose this or bring something in, is a world of choice, and that rather depends on what you're doing, what information you have, and sort of how you're using the space. But I think the thing to not lose sight of is that just putting everything in there will make you a wonderful ball of string, but not much more. So there is a point at which you inevitably move from doing actually sort of hands-on manipulation with your information and doing stuff to effectively doing InfoVis.
Yeah, I'm not sure where we disagree with that, Mark, because too much is too much.
Well, I don't. I'm saying I agree. I think it's just
Yeah.
you misunderstood what I said because I wasn't using very visual terms.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I mean, right now, for me, I have never experienced anything as exciting as dealing with this. We're dealing with real problems. But here's the thing, because I've decided to dedicate some time for the development, I can't go in circles anymore. So for instance, the timeline issue that we've discussed many times, we're doing an implementation of that we in this community can argue over and change completely because it's not released to the public yet. So it becomes very real, which is insanely wonderful. And this is why to some of the more technical people in the group, I sent out an email saying, technically interested, by the way, not technically able, huge difference. We need to, obviously I've accepted for years, we need to get past PDF, no question, right? The only problem I have with HTML is the current version of HTML that has to be hosted and it's got CSS and all kinds of stuff, right? But if we don't even get into this discussion now, but just accept, here's the thing, and it connects stuff, it gets exciting. And what was really interesting with the Doug and Ted, obviously there are other pioneers, but these are closest to our community. Ted's vision, of course there's a lot of it, but it's mostly documents that are visibly connected, right? That's the thing he highlights anyway. That in itself is not useful. But it becomes useful when it is something you can choose to have. Right, and Doug was all about interactions. For those of you who haven't seen his NLS demos, please have a look. I'll send you videos if you want. But through basic keyboard stuff, which we're not going to try to emulate, the way you go up a hierarchy, down a hierarchy, go in here, you squash the view, outside the view. So that's why maybe today I was thinking we could think a little bit about origami text, highly foldable text. We have outlines, we have glossaries, we have references. Is that useful enough? Mark has thoughts. I can feel it.
I'm just trying to understand what you mean. I mean, are you alluding to stretch text?
I'm not alluding to anything.
Which is very interesting, but it's proven to be on numerous occasions to be actually much more complex, more for the human than the technology side. Because the text has meaning in context, so actually just spanning and collapsing it is actually rather harder than we
Wikipedia
imagine.
does
or
it
you
on,
think of a different kind of fold.
Well, Wikipedia is on mobile is expanding and collapsing,
yes,
nobody really complains about.
For those who may not be aware of stretch text, it's basically have a little thing in the middle or at the end of a sentence. You click on it or something, and then stuff that was in there becomes revealed.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Brandon. I mean, certainly in terms of expanding and collapsing sort of major blocks and things, or expanding onto the end of something, that's I don't think complicated. I mean, I did some stuff with Ted Goranson actually a few years back. When was it, 2010, I think it was. We did some, but he was basically using inline stretch text in his commentaries and often nested stretch text. I was really interesting to do, but it was an absolute pig to implement. Partly because you keep having to look at where the join goes, and in fact, the way we did it there was you almost had two shoulder pieces. So you had your join, but you often had to rewrite the segment of text around the anchor, so the anchor the text made sense when closed and when open. And the thing I took away from that is it's a really, really interesting idea, but like so many of these things, actually incredibly difficult.
Well,
and we don't have tools for doing these things.
To address that, and also Tess's question, yeah, because it is a bit foldable, Tess, but also, Mark, you made me implement it in PDF. We just call it EndNotes, because you made me, thank you, double-click to see a citation, double-click on an EndNote, and it appears. It doesn't reflow the text, but in terms of providing further information in situ, of course, it's not the same. But in terms of,
it's an EndNote branch. It is an EndNote is in fact a branch.
No, it's not, because it's shown in situ. It pops up. Right.
Well, then it's on top of the text, so it's out of the flow. I mean,
no,
it's similar but different.
Mark, let me just remind you. And I'm reminding you because you made me do it. So, of course, when you read and you get across a citation with a number in a document created an author and reader, double click, you get title, author, all that good stuff, and the quote. Same thing happens for an endnote. You see a number, a superscript number, double click on it, and then it pops up because there is no bottom of the page while you're authoring, and I didn't want to faff with that.
Yeah.
So it's not the same as stretch text, but it's most certainly extra stuff is here. But I think
I'm just cautioning against calling it stretch text. Stretch text has a meaning, and so if you treat stretch text as these things do insert themselves into the text, but stretch text actually has quite a defined meaning. So it doesn't help if we overload it with new things.
No, I'm not at all saying it's stretch text. All I'm saying is that it is probably really important to look at different ways you can have a document that's bigger or smaller, depending. Now, Tess, a little bit to answer this, we're going to go over to our friend Claude. So looking at origami document, what it showed, and the colors are horrible, but Doug kind of started. So it's normal flat page, revealing citations, metadata layer, glossary unfolding, full spatial bloom, and unfortunately it doesn't really render it. But here, for instance, with a Ted Nelson, where you can see where one link goes to another document, because both Doug and Ted were interested in being able to link to specific sections. Like
that one's very tapestries. It's like Bob's Tapestries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
parallel pages.
Yeah. So that's kind of where these things come from. So, and just and like Mark says with view specs, these are all view specs of the same thing. It should be timeline, spatial, web of citations, should it be an outline, etc. So if we think of the text as being foldable in physical breaking ways and metaphysically in different ways, maybe we have something. Jonathan, Mr. Music Man, what can we take from the world of music notation, traditional or modern, that might help us think about folding, refolding, etc. text?
Well, I mean, music is inherently two-dimensional. A score is showing the even if it's got lots of different instruments, you typically got the lower notes at the bottom. We've got a whole load of separate staves, as they call them, and the higher instruments at the top. But when within each stave, you've got the lower notes at the bottom and the higher instruments at the top, and obviously time goes left to right. So it's very light text, but there is a need for this extra dimension. So just thinking out loud, you could ask what the second dimension would be of text if you had one. I mean, obviously you could invent all kinds of ones, but what would be the next most obvious dimension?
Well, one of the dimensions we have with our meetings is, of course, when the meeting was, so it's time.
I mean, it's text, as we know, is not necessarily a representation of physical human speech, although it is primarily that. So insofar as you can read out of text, it does represent a timeline. I don't want to obviously deflect from all the kinds of layouts where you have embedded pictures and funny things like that. So in that simple case of text, it does seem to be inherently 1D. Until you start breaking it down into individual meanings or summaries, zooming in and out, and so on.
Please keep on that and just ping. And then there's Tess, and then I have the question I'll put in the chat here. But Tess, please go ahead.
Well, I'm just thinking about music scoring as being, in layers. I'm thinking about the staff and just how the notes fit on it, but also, you know, it's a staff and you've got the different notes and different instruments are playing different notes and they're all layered on top of each other. So it's also a different way of looking at how we would spatially interact with information if, you know, there's like a bottom line of what the text is and then a top line of who's being cited and then, you know, a third line of just things that are mentioned, proper nouns, links, whatever. Like you could, I mean, if that's what we're doing, if we're using it to inspire how we look at a document, it, you know, there is different layers to one piece of text. Was that sort of the question?
Well, I can see, yes.
No, sorry, Jonathan, let me just ask Brandel to do something while you're talking. Brandel, could you find us a video of the magic carpet or something if you have it?
Sure.
Thanks. Jonathan, please go ahead.
Yeah, so the analogy, yeah, text, I mean, you're quite right. The analogy in text would be if you imagine text being just laid out horizontally, a single line, and then you could have you know, layers as other lines below or above. You know, and the problem with the musical score is you know, you can fill up the whole page vertically, but obviously you do see this sometimes in papers, don't you, when you've got a whole load of bunch of footnotes, and you end up sometimes with just one line per page with all the footnotes spilling over, and they maintain one line of text at the top, page after page, to maintain some kind of continuity, and it fills up. Yeah, so you could imagine, well, you know, annotations in the widest sense, each occupying another row on the y-axis.
I mean, it could be, but you know, you could also hide different layers, just see the text, just see the footnotes, just see the subjects mentioned. And you can also make it like overlays, like literal layers of like the way you put vellum over things.
I think these are the things where typically in layouts, you know, that obviously people insert rectangles and so on in complicated layouts, and they hope that the text dominates, and you can just slip in things above or below, or sometimes in the margins, you know, when you have a little summary call out in the margin. But it's true, in extremis, it might be more efficient to actually just have parallel whatever it is.
I had to look at Norwegian government map services last week for complicated reasons, and they really do a huge amount of layering. The kind of thing I think we expected Apple Maps and Google Maps to do, but they don't because they're consumer facing, which is fine. Of course, Google Maps does have certain amount of layers. So to have layers in time makes a lot of sense. But I do have another point. But Randall, you have the video ready by any chance?
Yeah.
Please share. It would be wonderful to see right now.
So this is a video. I think I'm probably explaining it in the voiceover, but I'll prefer to do it here. I took a VR view of a time series of all of the words in a 2-hour conversation 4 years ago in this community. And one of the things, I mean, you can talk to it, Frode, as much as I hear, but you can lift it up. And the width, the X offset, it determines the width of the bell curve that is determining the sort of offset of it, so that you have sort of continuous multidimensional abilities to kind of configure and manage the view that you have over that. Is there anything else you wanted to say about it, Frode?
I just want to look at it.
Fair.
It's so, I mean, first of all, I am very drawn to it because I've seen it a long time ago. You did it for us. And also what I'm doing now personally is almost the opposite in terms of aesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I'm so excited by the ACM Hypertext Conference XR view is that hopefully the most important thing will be the basic data sharing. So that in Ken's world, it'll be something entirely different. And maybe you could even put it in here, where it has almost no literal meaning, but it has a color or tone meaning. You know,
yeah.
The reason for the future of text community is that no one true solution, quote unquote, should win. That's the whole point to the community. We need to have very different ways to look at our stuff, right?
Yeah, I agree with that. Oh yeah. So in terms of the idea of layers, I think there's a few different things that text is, to your point, Jonathan, that speech isn't necessarily. One is that text can be revised so that there's a temporal aspect to the revisions. Speech is intrinsically referential, but written text, particularly because of the capacity for revision, can be much more densely and deeply revised. So, you know, every major or religious faith has this idea of sort of the primary and secondary and tertiary kind of references, and something that my daughter has maintained in the past is that, like, all text is hypertext. If you read Terry Pratchett, then it's so densely referential that it sort of provides a good inroad into any other sort of canon of text as well. So there's the temporal aspect of when things have been edited. So to your point, I think, Tom, that the level of detail is a really popular one as well. So I remember going to, like, Apple.com, like, I was very surprised that people have actually really managed to stick with this. But you know, the fact that everything is in these cards now, like these guys here, but there's this they've really stuck with this modal aspect where there's this progressive disclosure of adding things to these specific cards. And to your point, Mark, this is different from stretch text insofar as it is not displacing the page. They're sort of the page is then sort of conceptually an arrangement of cues into more specific sort of levels of detail, and different authors for Apple effectively sort of leverage this in different ways. So if we go to I think the Mac Mini is a better one for this. It has those aren't modal. But a number of things will have additional information on these pages, on these little cards that you can jump into. And the expectation is that you don't have the ability to navigate the rest of the site, but it's clear where you are by virtue of the fact that, you know, you can kill the card and jump into the next thing.
Yeah, that is really interesting. Now, there's been a discussion, thank you, Peter, about OpenDoc back in the day, which gave us a lot of things and didn't really exist. So the discussion I'm having with the organization I mentioned is got to make it cooler name. I agree, Peter. The person I'll be seeing virtually at MIT is interested in networking, connection, social things, all of that stuff. I really think we need to settle on some kind of interchange format. It is absolutely bizarre that the world doesn't have a useful document that fits our criteria. Does anyone have anything you want to fight for?
I'm pleased as punch that you said EPUB, because that is HTML. I think I say that not to be peevish, but to say that I totally concede that the way that web resources are hosted is a significant challenge. And so you know, to that end, I don't mind what it is as long as it's HTML. Is actually less of a sort of a skite and more of a you're absolutely right in that maybe the transmission, distribution, and packaging is a challenge, but representationally, I see no reason why it shouldn't be HTML. So yeah, that's all I'll add about that.
So Mark has a comment.
Yeah, just quickly, because when you sent me something the other day, I thought, okay, I'll dust up. Because I last looked at EPUB in some detail when I made an EPUB of literary machines, which was actually proved to be testing, and actually showed that EPUB is actually not designed for. It's basically designed for getting your novel onto an e-reader.
Oh, yeah,
it's actually a more restrictive version because it's XHTML, a version of HTML, and really what it was trying to do was to settle things, because at the time they just needed a format they could just make prose books with at a time when HTML was moving along. HTML4 was the problem at the time. We now have HTML5, which is much more capable. So I would say EPUB I mean, they're both standards. They're both W3C standards, but I would say HTML would be better than EPUB simply because EPUB's harder to write, more restrictive. And I'm not sure. I take your point about sort of CSS and JavaScript, but actually HTML doesn't have to have JavaScript. In fact, it doesn't really have to have CSS at all. About the only bits you might want to are the text basics, like sort of bold and underlined and that kind of thing. And those are catered for anyway by tags within HTML. So I think the CSS bit is a bit of a side thing. The fact that HTML pages today are fantastically complex is more to do with the display aspect of it rather than the structure of the text. And the bit that I think we're talking about moving around is the text rather than the display. Yeah. So I think if you pull those two things apart, HTML, because I hats off to, I mean, it was Brandl some years ago said, well, if you want to get it into this environment, probably HTML is your best bet. And having sort of kissed a few frogs since then, I still think his summation then holds true. I don't think there is a better thing. HTML is now a fairly well tested standard, and I think it's pretty stable as a means. I mean, one of the things that perhaps we might be considering is that rather than trying to, in a sense, make a new form of document, is to effectively define what do they call them, micro format. Yeah. In other words, here's something that is compatible with the standard, which addresses the needs of XR and text positioning and all the various things, because it'll turn out to be a bit more than just an X and a Y and a Z, you know, when you get to the bottom of the heap. And that might be a way in which it's possible to do some development alongside a format without actually sort of bending that format out of shape or putting anyone's nose out of joint, because you appear to be doing sort of shadow development, which means that we could still look at the needs of the text in XR, but still sit very close to HTML. Thanks.
So just briefly, Tom, I would very much give Mark a big hug on that one. That is exactly what I hope we can do. Whether it's EPUB or now HTML, philosophically, I don't care. You've given really good reasons why to do HTML. So I really think what we should do is logically something like Markdown for HTML, just meaning simple, right? And I think you're absolutely right in the language. We should do a subversion of HTML, almost like going back to the roots. Now, that's your day job. Fantastic. What's your day job? Right. Exactly, Brandl. So these kinds of discussions are really, really important. They're also boring for a lot of people. And the actual issue of it is the document ability, or as in having HTML as a document. If you take an HTML document, drag it into Safari or whatever browser, chances are it won't render. And that is what you're talking about, Mark, and that's what I agree with. Most of them fall to pieces. So at some point, we should come together and specify these are the maximum tags that we allow in the system.
Can you clarify don't render, just before you whiz past that? Because that seems a rather bold statement that I'm not sure I understand.
It becomes a mess because most of them use CSS or something, right? If you just take a page, save it, drag it back in my experience, it becomes a jumbled. The CSS is absolutely horrible for the work we're doing, and it's absolutely brilliant for shop front ends.
Okay, I think sorry, I don't mean to derail the thing, but I just urge a bit of caution. I suspect you might not be looking perhaps at the best examples of CSS. Certainly if you take thing that's designed to be sort of sales copy or something where there's a lot of emphasis on the design and doing all kind of cool, funky stuff. But most HTML, well-formed written HTML, you know, it'll come out in Times Roman with dark blue underlines.
Mark, as an example,
and it will fit together.
So as an example, oh, yes, see you later, Tess, sorry. As an example, while Tom speaks, can you please go to ACM or somewhere else, find an HTML document, download it, and share screen so we can look at it, you do it, so we look at the same thing? Fantastic. Tom, please, and thank you for your patience.
No worries. This will be my last comment because I got to bail too. I just wanted to draw your attention to a link I posted earlier. I'll drop it on there again. About this company that's trying to develop a smart document. And I don't know exactly. They're talking about infusing the document with code that will allow it to do all sorts of crazy stuff. I don't know how crazy, but I just heard about them. They just did an IPO on it last week. But that might be something worth looking at if we're interested in where this might be going. But I kind of agree with previous comments about, HTML is a good way to deconstruct, and that's the key, is that we got to stop. Too many documents are like PDFs. They're basically ideas in boxes, and it's really hard to get them back out of those boxes. And Apple's gotten pretty good about the OCR on even graphic PDFs, and that's gotten better. But you're still compensating for an inferior stopgap measure from, what was it, 25, 30 years ago. So yeah, so that's kind of where we need to be. And I agree, we need to go simple. And and the other thing I wanted to say is, Peter brought up OpenDoc. That's something to think about, because that's a very different way of thinking about how software works from what we've become used to. And it actually dates back to the stuff that Alan Kay was working on at Park. They didn't have any apps on the computers they developed there. They just had tasks, and the only reason we have apps is because Bill Gates decided that was the only way to make money off of it. And others. I mean, it's not a dumb idea from a capitalist perspective, but yeah, that's got me thinking now. So anyway, I'll leave you with that thought. It'll keep you up at night, and I'll talk to you guys next week.
Yeah,
Bye.
see you next week. Mark, thanks you for the stretch text. Absolutely agree on those definitions. I was just talking about kind of getting other stuff.
Oh, sure. That was just, I suddenly thought, oh, I know where Ted rated. That's Ted's original thing. There's a link to, there's a great grab bag of his papers. That there are probably still a few because it's OCR from very bad typewriting. But I think that's essentially, I can immediately see a typo, but I don't know what a Dynecale it's console is.
That's good. Thank you very much. And just briefly before Astral, I just want to say the thing that Tom posted from the Jerusalem Post, making PDFs intelligent, they're going to get millions in funding. I don't think they'll produce anything because security and all the reading software will disallow it. I did my PhD. Basically, I'm trying to put more stuff in PDFs, and it screamed a lot. Astral, please go ahead.
So I do wish I had one of my engineer friends here for this conversation. I've been trying to get them out, but they've been ill. I think we are. My intuition says that the basis should be in a game engine, due to the spatiality and like the interconnectedness of the stuff we're talking about. Game engines are like Toyota just built theirs for their new car. Game engines, I think, are it gives us a lot more flexibility when we're building in these kinds of spaces. So my intuition says like Godot is what I've been working with for a while. And I think that is my proposal.
Are you talking about the engine for Godot, or are you talking about, does it have a specific data format? Because I think it's really, really, really important to separate the engine and rendering system from the data.
There is a data format that we're building right now that, again, I wish I had my engineer here for.
Oh, no rush. We would love to see that because we are, as you can tell, we don't really care what it is. As long as it fulfills the criteria of being extremely open, so we can have spatial scenes shared in very different environments. So please, when they're well, please invite them to come to our meetings. I think Brandel?
Cool. So you mentioned dragging files in and blaming CSS. Totally understand that. What's going on there is a combination of, so if you pull a single file down from a page, from a website, and it's referencing things that you don't then also have in that local structure, that's when it's going to break. The ways around, and that's not a function of whether it has CSS or JavaScript or any of those things. That's a function of whether it either has or has the ability to reference those things. The other thing is that there is a vastly different, and this is for very good, unfortunately, Peter, security reasons related to content security policies, where if things are on your local computer, they have the ability to reach into large parts of your local computer. And for that reason, the way that they also have the ability to reach out into the wider internet is severely curtailed, because having the ability to do both, as we saw many, many times in the 1990s, is an absolute disaster. So, one of the things that I do when I build HTML pages is I mostly make them as monolithic as possible, so that actually, if I have CSS, it's actually in a style block rather than in a CSS file. That's not the way that professional web developers, and even me, if I'm being honest, when I'm being a professional web developer, I don't do that. I put it in a CSS file so I can reference it without duplication. But that's not a feature per se of CSS. And likewise, as I mentioned in email, you can't cite a CSS file. It has to be in it, in the page itself. And you also don't have the ability to leverage any JavaScript. So all HTML renderers can simply turn JavaScript off, and then you have essentially what is displayed within email there. As to the thing that spatial sort of hypertext should be, as I've said before, and if I just very, very quietly to say, like, almost from an official capacity, that is what I work on. I work on how to make hypertext spatial, how to be able to convey Z depth, how to be able to integrate intrinsically three-dimensional objects like model elements, and what is the appropriate way of interleaving the concerns of spatial ability versus sort of the risk of disclosing this kind of information. So, Astral, to your point about Godot is really good, but it's an engine that runs in a direct rendering mode of a kind that means that the engine needs to know everything about what a user is doing. From that perspective, all of the browsers and devices that want to be able to mediate multiple experiences side by side are not going to have the ability to use Godot for any part of that in the event that they are trying to show multiple things with a trust boundary across those things. As Ken Perlin has said in the past, it's not an issue when you're prototyping. You can use whatever you want. There's no qualms, no issues related to that. But an engine that is direct, an engine that is explicitly responsible, Pico actually, for web spatial. You go to webspatial.dev, they've got a great sort of enunciation of that. I believe they also presented at W3C TPAC last year, where they came to this conclusion without my having to tell them. I was thrilled. You cannot have an engine that is under the control of a potential third party, an advertiser, whatever else, and also expect to sort of have multiple people sort of participate in parallel that way. That's not going to work in the same way that macOS is macOS, Win32 is Win32. The level of disclosure, the oversight, the scope of the information that it has isn't appropriate. So if it's a game engine, yes, but it needs to be a game engine that is actually being sort of it's sort of it kind of doesn't matter what it is. Envision it's a reality kit. I would hope that in Android XR it's Fuchsia, but I think they probably didn't get that one right. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
I think there's, I guess, a difference in scope. I think I'm thinking maybe I'm hedging against a paradigm where I guess this kind of like local technology is completely inaccessible to people, as we're seeing with hardware prices skyrocketing. How do you get the platform would then be streamed most of the time anyway?
Yeah, I mean, that's a strong point for the environment, but I want us to have, for spatial or cyberspace or XR, whatever we call it, a Cambrian explosion of experimentation, similar to what we saw in the 60s for flat screens, for framed information. The only way we can have that and make it keep going is by having extremely open information sharing. So all of these things that we're talking about should be eminently supported and possible. So I'll ask Brandel the direct question here then. Within what you're doing now, and in a few seconds we're going to see Mark show ACM example. Brandel, can we do a thing where in author I do the spatial stuff you just saw, and each thing has title, description, and some other tags like this is and whatever, and have that encoded within the way that you look at the world? Because if author can export that, and it's based on the open stuff that you're doing, I can't imagine anything that would make me happier.
Yes, I'm glad. Not for a few years. So one of the challenges is in order to make this impactful, to your point earlier, Peter Dimitrios, like Vermal died. It doesn't have enough to do. I mean, one, it was very, very early in the web. Tony and folks were looking at Vermal in the mid-90s. I think BT Open World was 97, something like that. But two, there wasn't much of in the way of interconnect between the way that the semantics and the functionality of the traditional web, I guess, relate to the contents that you would put into a Vermal document. And I think that was a real issue, and something that, like, if you're going to do that, then WebGL, WebGPU is perfectly adequate. You can just use a canvas to run a program inside a page, but the challenge with that is that they don't have enough to do with each other. And where there's something like 25 million web developers, something wild like that, they don't have a way into this unless they then also become software developers or graphics software developers, and they are not that, and it should be okay that they are not. So to answer your question, for like, in order to make sure that the web is the web and spatial, it's going to take some time. That means that people need to build the technology stack. That's fruit companies and other companies, and then we also need to be able to get around a great big table this year in Dublin, next year wherever,
but Brandel,
and agree on it.
It's so simple, because
I'm glad you think so.
No, an aspect of it, right? What you're doing is not simple. But there is, and Mark, you'll do a screen share in a second, please. But what I simply mean is, for something as basic as XYZ equals ID, here's a list of items by their ID. That can do a lot. Because if you then have if you make the ID a recognizable thing, a standard, like let's say we use the JSON formatting for it, then it is term equals, description equals, then we have a few other things. Once we have that and it's actually in use, if we can share that between each other without any question about the rendering, relationship, font size, positioning, only positioning, it could make such a difference. Plain text.
Totally agree.
Good, we'll do that. Okay, Mark, over to you before Randall and I start agreeing too much.
Okay, stand by. I think it's that one. So, yes, it is. Right, first I'm going to show you. This is. Ooh, here we go. It's moved around. So, are you seeing this article?
Yes.
Beyond the page break. Right. Okay. This is pulled. This is coming direct from the ACM. So this is one of their generated HTML pages done by them. It's actually pretty clean. It has some bugs in it. So, for instance, it has nice popovers, but it doesn't have them for footnotes. And when they get to the edge, you see that there's a bug in the thing. Also, when you press a footnote, it gets you the footnote, but there's no backlink. Whereas if you use a citation, you actually get that. And if there are multiple links to the reference, it links to every one. That's all quite nicely done. Yeah. So I was quite interested. So I thought, I know what I'll do. I'll take one of my papers, which, because of some screw up in the publishing, they don't have an HTML version of. A bit of a labor of love because it has, I think, nigh on 200 references. So this is, I manually took the text out of the PDF, I used essentially the thing I just showed you as the template. I had to use local copies of the ACM libraries because there are trans-domain security issues about pulling some of the content. But essentially, it has the same nav bar and everything. Oops. And then what I also did was I have gone and done a few bug fixes, which I did with Claude, which was interesting fun. So now you'll know. It's doing it again. You'll notice the pop-up comes. I thought I fixed it by telling Claude, stop trying to just hide it until you've ascertained it's in the right position. But it's obviously having fun. And fair enough, it understands what I don't about this. So that sort of level of Hyperscript JavaScript way beyond me. The other thing I fixed is if I get a footnote like this, I get a, oh, this is one of the unfixed ones. Sorry. I'll just give me 2 seconds. Let me open the right one. Should be, or maybe I'm fixed on here. Yeah.
Okay.
And then find a footnote, and we get the backlinks.
Don't stop sharing, by the way, when you're done.
Yeah.
Just tell me when you're done, please.
So anyway, that was to show you, and then the one other thing you wanted to see. So anyway, that's the fixed one, and there you go. So that's the weather spatial hypertext with no JavaScript. Not sure why the images aren't coming in because I think they should do. In fairness to the ACM, it goes back to the point. If you write clean HTML, it doesn't look very sexy, but it's perfectly readable.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think the things you've seen that are broken are people are doing all sorts of funky dynamic includes and things which are never going to work for reasons that have been explained. But broadly, if you write a well-formed DOM for your document or something, that's what 1990s HTML.
Yeah, exactly. So don't stop sharing. So
yep, sure.
We're still talking. This is great. We're still talking about the difference between the rendering environment, which is the JavaScript original. This is a document that you then downloaded and then opened in Safari, which is exactly what I asked for. Thank you. The fact that one image doesn't work is not the end of the world.
But that's only because that's what I'm
saying.
A quick and dirty thing, I made a copy of the one you've seen, put it in another folder, so the relative path to the image is broken. That's all that's happened there. Yeah. I can fix that in seconds. Yeah. So it ought to work.
Mark, yes, I absolutely. I'm saying that is not the end of the world. Still, images are not in the same document, and I think, relatively speaking, that's okay with HTML. It's just very difficult. You can do it. You can have like Chris has shown us, a hex thing at the bottom. Now, I guess the question then becomes, what rules the ACM has to generate these? Because this may very well be what we just copy. We just say ACM plain HTML is what we're talking about. So we don't have to invent our own.
Yeah, I mean, it's
what's the basis of it? Because you and I both say it's like 1991 HTML, and it's very close, but I'm sure there's a more specific.
Well, the code is, and what I mean is the render. That looks like a early web page. It's all in Times Roman. There's you've got bold, italic, and basically that's it, and links.
But the render is irrelevant for this. We're talking about the text having all its semantic bits, like links and all of that stuff, right? So it seems they're doing a very good job. So if we had a better idea of, we're kind of talking about Markdown for HTML, saying, within the XR world that we're trying to create, we would love it to be HTML, but if it has sophisticated stuff in there, we can't expect the engine to be able to render it correctly.
Yeah, the problem at the moment with Markdown is very nice, and Markdown is clearly, despite my sort of not particular liking of it, it is becoming, rather like JSON, just becoming a de facto interchange. For instance, all your little AI tools, they'll be pushing around bits of Markdown. Where it falls apart is the moment you want to do anything more than basic text. There are all sorts of flavors of Markdown, because I think probably the next thing is when somebody makes Markdown into a standard, it probably will resolve this. Until that point, everyone's going off and doing their separate thing. So HTML is actually safer, I think, than Markdown because you know what you've got. If you write something that is valid HTML5.
Mark, I wasn't saying we should use asterisks and that. What I mean is we need to reclaim the web. Right? It shouldn't be just highly polished like Brandl showed us the apple.com. Beautiful, interactive, brilliant when you get it from the server and view it. I think it is really, really important that someone like me should be able to export from author with a list of stuff that then someone like Brandl or whoever can put in their environment. At least the basic spatial relationships and the metadata is preserved. That's it. Right, and yeah, you can stop sharing, and thank you very much, Mark.
But that's, I mean, the thing about that, the spatial bit is something you're going to add to that. That won't be in this insofar as that will be extra information, probably as a hidden field within the HTML.
That's absolutely
if it's going
fine.
to travel in the HTML document.
Absolutely fine. We just have to put a stake in the ground and say it is thus. I'm in no appetite to make it. I can. I mean, we have it because I'm using it between two platforms. But if we have something, if I could send to Brandl with the kind of experiments he does in WebXR, the meeting record of today, for instance, and when it opened in his environment, it would be a completely different font, different colors, different everything, except the relative XYZ is maintained. To me, that would be absolutely, for the future of all of this, so important.
Well, a more webby way to do it would probably, I mean, it seems sensible because basically you're talking about data rather than text. So the XR stuff, frankly, is mostly data. I don't think there's any reason that you couldn't, because JSON is valid JavaScript, you could actually embed the JSON into the HTML file. It's a hokey way of doing it, but that's the only reason you do that is so that it's part of, it travels with the document.
Sure.
And I would imagine if you're going to stick with today's standards, you probably want to do JSON for your XR, data.
Yeah, and exactly that's what we're doing. Brandl,
are we?
That's the approach of Visual Meta is to embed the JSON of the data in a PDF, but also when we do Word, RTF, or HTML, it does the same thing. Now, the spatial stuff hasn't been completed, but I like what you're saying, Mark, and I believe, no, sorry, we haven't really done it, but this is how we flow. So I'm going to ask you, Brandl, because we have 3 minutes left. Let's say that you and I have agreed that the meeting record, which is just these little index cards, as you know about so well, I send it to you in a minimalist format. How do you want them, dude?
In 2028. We don't have it. We don't. It's the,
but for you
the basis on which these things are spatialized.
No, not Apple, not officially, but let's say, for instance.
No, I don't even mean as Apple. I mean, in terms of the way that W3C should resolve this is a years-long project that we do not have the answer to.
Right.
But what a document is a long and hairy discussion that we've hashed out in a number of ways. What it means for all of the folks in the context of browser vending and user agents and things like that. What kinds of addressable spaces they want to have, the kind of lexical relationships that they want to kind of establish on the basis of sort of absolute versus relative kind of positioning, flow layouts. Those are incredibly difficult topics, and so yes. I'm just playing in a little sandbox right now that should hopefully make people realize not that the answers are simple, but that the answers are complicated and that deserves their full attention.
The word model obviously means a subset of reality, right? So you have different models for different reasons or different utilities.
Yeah.
What you're talking about is important, complicated. I don't understand the beginnings of it, no question. But I do know, just from having experimented with this build, these versions of Author, just being able to have a few things, have the basic stuff behind it, it has real utility, right? So I am not talking about an equivalent of Microsoft Word or PDF. I'm talking about literally the equivalent of plain text.
Mhm.
So you know what? I would like to be able to send you, and this is what Mark has really taught me about LaTeX. You have, for citations, you have a BibTeX, which is, this thing is a lot of that stuff, right? And what is in the fields there, there is a minimum requirement, but you can also put a lot of stuff. And then you have, in the document, you have just a little thing referring to it. It is such an important approach. And even though I'm kind of, in a sense, leaving academia in terms of focus, it's more about dialogue. It's so amazing. So if we can just, in the community, we've saved this configuration. So Brandl is XYZ, and here's the ID. It, it really has utility. It doesn't need to do anything other than that, don't you think?
So
Just
you
for us to
can make
play.
something that so if the question is, how could I do something like that today? Then any way you want, basically, we don't have the ability to render that as a HTML page, but you could do it in WebXR, you could use JSON, you could use whatever. If the question is, how does HTML do that? Then that is a question that I think has an answer, and it will be many years away, and it will be the foundation of the way that the web is brokered and presented for the next 50 years. And it's for that reason that I want to give it the time. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense.
It makes sense. And if we were by your taco truck, this would be a much longer discussion. By the way, Brandl has the most amazing taco truck right outside his office. All of that is well and fine, but you sit inside a huge cannon. You're in a very powerful organization. I'm sitting outside looking at poetry. And when we look at how quickly things ossify, right, it is of a serious concern. So that's why everything you're doing, no question. But right now, let's say you want to build another magic carpet type thing.
Uh-huh.
If I send it to you the way just discussed, you would probably find that useful to an extent, right?
Yeah. I mean, depending on what the resources are, the balance of whether it should be sort of 3D first. In that case, a USD or a GLTF would be a good format. If you have things that are primarily textual and I want to come up with positions for it, then a JSON that has the ability to present those things. But there are shades in between. USD doesn't have a good text schema yet. That's something that Adobe and Autodesk are sort of chipping away at, and we're kind of working out what are the outer edges of how texty that text should be. One of the things that I think would be good is to make sure that the idea of 3D models in USD and HTML and GLTF have a better way of understanding and reasoning about it, so that actually lowers the level, the level of text that should exist as text in USD and GLTF, and rather defers that to a better model, which is HTML. So these are things that I like I said, am explicitly officially responsible for, and so I don't want to overstate the speed at which they're going to come, because I know that they are very, very complicated to get actually right. That said, you can explore and get whatever you want done in an afternoon if you spin up enough Claude, or if you know how to write the code yourself. And so what I'm saying are two different things. Like, you can do this, and I don't have an answer for how it should be done.
Right. So let's say that for fun, you decided that, oh my gosh, I saw the map in Author and Vision and it's so brilliant, can't believe it. I need it in WebXR. Provided you got the data, it would take you what? Half a day to build, right?
Mm.
Right. Is it not reasonable to say that you would need to be able to get those little nodes, and they would have to be stored somehow?
Um, uh, Yes. Well, yeah. I mean, if we're still on the WebXR, the custom engine and all that kind of stuff, then yeah. But yeah, like in terms of whether that has relevance for what I would recommend to people to do outside that time, after the time after which we've managed to hash out these things, like they have very little relevance to one another. Hopefully, one will be able to be transposable into the other. The stuff that we build today will have the ability to do this stuff. And but I mean nothing particular by 28, just then that it is not this year or next year or so
but Randall, lovingly, the problem is you're too intelligent and you know too much. I don't mean that in any kind of a sarcastic way. What I mean is that you're looking at really deep issues, and I'm just saying, here's my business card, and you hold it. Like there was Peter had the HyperCard reference earlier, right? When I asked Claude today about Doug, Ted, and my work to see what he could do with blah blah, it made an app without me asking it. I didn't ask for an app at all, and it runs not very well, but it runs, right? The speed at which XR, once it takes off, will be taken over by companies like Google doing their docs and Microsoft doing their Word will be an absolute meteor hitting the planet. And whoever wins that will win. And that's why I'm really fighting for anybody can send a .txt. I want to have a TXT that just happens to have XYZ. I really think
no, that's fair.
that should be possible.
Unfortunately have to drop. I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. Look forward to next week, and maybe we can do special stuff in March.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Conference, yeah. Yeah, we are a bit over. So I'm looking at Mark's comment here.
Yeah, you just asked, you said how are citations in do you mean how do they get into HTML?
How are they encoded?
Well, essentially what I did was I used Text Sniper, which I think is a wrapper around the sort of same tech as you have
but there is no model for citation in HTML, right? That is in use.
Oh no, it doesn't do that. So I mean, it's a sort of long-standing problem in that wasn't something the HTML world was particularly interested in. So there isn't a formal structure for it.
But the thing is, in this tiny little community that we have, I don't think we, including me, realize if we do something right with this, the potential we have that others will, oh, that's kind of cool, and use it, right? So it's simple, and this is very stupid, but for the sake of it, to embed a bibtex at the end of an HTML file, making the HTML aware of it. We can do this stuff.
You probably more effective would, instead of doing that and having yet more stuff, is just when you encode the HTML, you just put more markers, which you can do in HTML, into the actual citation. So you just don't have to state it multiple times, that you have all the rest, you can say, right, this is the authors, this is the title, this is the such and such. You can do that by essentially extending the HTML, and that would seem to me a much more elegant thing. Every time you restate it multiple times, you introduce the opportunity for rekeying error and divergence between
Mark, this is where
two versions of the same data.
This is where we agree very, very strongly, right? But here's the thing. I am going to put this spatial data into PDF because it has to be tested. So we have something to argue about and test and play with, right? And I know we're all fighting for the same thing here. We have slightly different perspectives of doing it. To do something similar in HTML, I think would be really, really useful. Hidden in the HTML to have, Jonathan, definition, position, all of that stuff. We just have to do it.
Well, yeah, the answer is finding somebody, because you need to find somebody who. Sorry,
we do it.
Well, I mean, when you say we, I mean who are you looking at? Because I mean, I think most people are.
I'll pay for the programming. We will discuss together what this thing should look like, and once it goes between the environments that I fully control, then that's a proof of concept. Then we go to the other people in our community and say, we have now this thing that has that stuff in it that is described in this manner, do you want to try to import it?
I mean, have you looked before I do that? Before you do that, I would do a literature search for. I'm sure people will have attempted to put citation data in structure form into documents before. So the first thing I would do is do a literature search and see what's there. Because if there's anything that basically is a good idea, just wasn't taken forward, you might as well do that because it saves time. Otherwise, at least it means we can say, actually, no, this is sort of completely untouched. And it's not about whose ball it is to play with, but simply that making sure that, for instance, you're not doing parallel evolution with another thing that might work. I think that would make it much easier because the key bit here is the data.
Yeah, Mark, I have done it, and if it takes a second, it comes up. It does exist, right? That's part of it, but I'm really talking about. Sorry, guys, for going on and on. I know it's not super sexy, but I really am talking about. Here's a card. It's in space here, XYZ. Here's another one, XYZ.
Yeah,
that's it. What's
so
inside
the Firefox thing? The Firefox thing is nothing. The Firefox thing is just visual markup indicating that citation information. It's not what you're talking about at all.
Okay.
So in other words, it's no use to you because it's doing a different thing.
Okay, Mark. The citation stuff is a type of data. Glossary term is another type of data, and note is another type of data. There are many types of data that we all believe would be useful to be able to have in space, including floating JPEGs, of course, right, and models. All I'm saying is, whether it's not whether in PDF and HTML and other document formats, it should be possible to do an XYZ of the relative locations. All I'm saying, like when you saw the massive noisy thing that I had here,
yeah.
Once I work on that for a bit, I want to be able to share it with you guys, and you can then walk through the curated thing. And it technically it is nothing. We just have to decide on a manner to do it.
Yeah, I'm just confused because I don't think anyone said it can't or shouldn't be done. So I'm not. Are you saying you think people are saying that you can't do it, or I'm confused?
No. I'm saying I will do it. I will take it from author to PDF to reader. HTML separate, but I will start with that. But how I do it with the brains that you guys have, it's really valuable that I don't do something absolutely dumb, because once it's proven as a concept, then we will, well, at least I will shop it around to other people who do XR stuff and say, look, here's a document with blah, blah, blah. In my system, it looks like this, this, this. Do you want to import it? And they may say, well, you're missing so-and-so, and we change it or whatever.
Yeah, but in terms of a literature search, I go a bit deeper than sort of the Microsoft stuff. You probably want to look at Dublin Core and one or two other things like that.
No, I don't.
Because I'm saying you do. I know Mark, you don't want to, but I'm saying you do need to.
Mark,
you do need to.
Mark, I am not that interested in academic work anymore.
It's not academic work. Just for once, just accept that people are giving you some sage advice. Just saying I don't want to each time that there's something that needs to be done. It's not going to get you to your endpoint.
I'm talking about the spatial aspect. I'm not talking about what's in the items. I'm not talking only literature reviews. I'm talking about literally have an index card that says Peter Demetrius. I interact with it. I see more about Peter. The separate thing of having 7 hypertexts floating and having information about that is important. But the primary thing right now is just to, here is a term, more information, category, and whatever, a few tags. Yeah, hi Peter.
Well, do that as Jason. Do that as Jason. That's much quicker, and you don't really. That'll save you a boatload of time. If you're just doing the basic spec of your 3D items, unless you want to put lots of formatting in there, if it's basically just those things, Jason, you really basically know how to do that. You've got the drivetrain for that. So I just use Jason and be done with it. Save yourself a ton of time.
So that is what we have. But there are also, on the polish of that, there are also specific things like the terminology of what is the thing that is shown initially. Usually, if it's a glossary, it's called a term, right? But in the citation, it might be title, author, or something else. I just think it's really great to have you guys chime in with what you think that should look like. I agree with you, Mark.
Well, if
Jason
you
is
give us a
brilliant.
manifest of all the bits, if you make us a manifest, an example that has all that, it basically fills out all the optional things, then then that's the kind of thing the group could talk about. You can pick some things if you want or not have titles, but what you need to know is what to comment on it. You need to know what the information is and what its intended purpose is. And then people say, whether certain things need particular names or already basically, they represent terms already in use and therefore the same term will be relative. But whilst it's in JSON, you actually control all the keys, the names of the tags, as it were.
Yeah.
And you can always go around the boy and rename them later.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Sorry, I just dropped something. No, yeah, no, absolutely. But the discussion I'm also hoping to get into in the community here is what's inside. Thank you, Peter. I saw that. It is also like today. I showed you the interaction of like and hide, which are really, really important. They should probably not be in the exported document, but there should be an option for that, right? That's probably an annotation level thing that the user is doing. It's not part of the intrinsic bit of the card. And then there's the other.
Correct.
Yeah. And then there's the other thing of context. What is the new thing versus the stuff you have in the room to refer to? That's when it gets really, really interesting because.
Well, when you say context, just step back a second. So you have a card, and you're saying you want when you decompose the card. So in other words, when you zoom into it.
No, that's not what I mean. That's not what I mean.
Right.
No, go ahead with that. But I want to hear what you have to say. But that's something else.
What I mean is, so the other thing with JSON, I mean, I think that there's technology here that's good and waiting for use. And the other thing is linked data. So your JSON can just point to another thing, another bit of data that whether it's physically put in that file or whether it's sort of pulled from the immediate area.
But no,
you can do
that can't happen. That can't happen because of the permissions issues. Everything.
Fine. Well, then you just put it into the file. I mean, that's a limitation for now. You have to live with, and I think people will come to see that might have to flex in time. But that's not something you can fix now. But the point is, you can put all that JSON in there. You can still reference things between them. So in other words, part of the issue you'll have is that you'll have the sort of the above the fold problem. As you put everything, it gets longer and longer, and you doesn't know where to put it. So you can just say, okay, this bit for this key value for this thing it needs. Just go and look at item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is another bit of JSON elsewhere. That's fairly simple to do. So the thing is knowing the manifest of things that you want. So the obvious things like its X, Y, Z coordinates. You probably want to know which way it's facing. You probably want to know. You might have a sense of its initial size, or you might have defined.
I don't think you need any of this.
Fine. So you're going to say the rendering engine, whatever it is going to decide everything. You're just going to say there's information at this. Well, it goes back to my point about saying, we got all of this thing about cards. So you don't really want, that's render. Think about the data. Dot in space at this position has all this information attached to it. Now go do what you like with it.
Yeah.
That's, I would have thought, very easily done in JSON. The main thing you have to work out is what is the manifest of an item. What are all the things it needs? Which ones are which ones does it absolutely have to have, and which ones are voluntary? Which ones can you leave out?
No, absolutely. So this I already have, right? So in Author, all of this is stored as JSON. It's a JSON file. So,
yes, but it's stored in JSON. It doesn't mean you have a JSON format for it. They're two different things. JSON is both a method of encoding, but JSON file is information that is stored as valid JavaScript. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, okay,
the structure within a JSON is significantly different because that's how you read it in and out.
Yes, and that's what it does. It reads it in and out. When I write it on Mac in Author, move a thing from here to there, and then I open it up in Author Vision OS, it reads that it was there, and that's it. So in terms of the rendering, this is why I use the term plain text. Your plain text applications, you can, in the settings, set the typeface, right? All of that, everything visual, except for things like invisible characters, paragraph break. things like that. So there is a minimum amount of spatiality, even in a plain text document, just, if you have a line break. Minimal, right? So all I'm referring to here is, what you saw earlier, I sent it to you, Mark, and if you want it to be in a more color-coded environment, different font, different sizes, even if, let's say, for the sake of argument, you are out and about in a field and you want it to be 100 meters wide, that should be trivial for you to choose.
Well, exactly. So the rather like the web browser, if I choose to use a custom style sheet, you might have done all this fancy CSS, but I can just turn that off. I just, I myself, I want it in, 12 point times written. So that's essentially that. So what would be useful probably is to see what your sort of per item JSON, 3D JSON looks like, and to see whether that's actually a good start, whether that as it exists is a workable starting point for more, or whether it needs to be turned into, for whatever reason, for usability purposes, it needs to be slightly restructured. I mean, what the app does internally doesn't really matter. It's the moment it pumps it out to be used by other things that you're creating a sort of quasi standard.
And I expect to have that for next week. So thank you guys. We're 20 minutes over. I greatly appreciate it. I saw what you were saying with the chat there, Jonathan. It is crazy. Any final thoughts or comments from anyone? Also, as usual, if you want to, please look at the record from this meeting or previous to see if you are construed correctly or misconstrued and all of that good stuff. I'll put it up as soon as I can. Have a lovely week. Bye, everyone. Thank you for being here. Bye.